Welcome to the 5th installment in the 8 Essential Steps to Clawhammer Banjo video series. Up until this point, we've been exclusively working on developing our picking hand, or the clawhammer stroke. And that's for good reason, because that's what gives this style of music its defining sound. And if you've made your way through the first 4 videos, then you should have a firm grip on the fundamentals of the clawhammer stroke, one that will serve you well from here on down the road in whatever you choose to do with your music. That being said, I don't want this to give you the wrong impression that the fretting hand is somehow unimportant or less important in clawhammer banjo. In fact, I'd argue that the fretting hand perhaps is more important in clawhammer banjo than it is with your typical stringed instrument. And that's largely because of the clawhammer stroke itself. I've said before that one of the most important things to do when you're playing clawhammer banjo is to make sure you're always keeping that clawhammer motion going with your picking hand. But always remaining in that set pattern introduces some constraints. There will be times when you'll want to play notes with your picking hand, but that doing so would require you deviate from the pattern, which we don't want to do. So the way you get those notes is oftentimes with the left hand. And so the clawhammer banjo player has a toolbox of left hand techniques that are somewhat unique to this style of music. And in the next sequence of videos, we're going to be covering basic fretting as well as some of the more unique clawhammer banjo fretting hand techniques. So in this video, we're going to be covering the basics of fretting. And if you've played a stringed instrument before, or if you've played other styles of banjo, then this will be a bit of a review for you. But not to worry, in the next series of videos, we'll be getting to some of the more advanced techniques that I said were more unique to the clawhammer banjo player. Also, we're not going to be neglecting the picking hand altogether. In fact, we'll be revisiting some of the picking patterns that we worked on in the last video, but this time I'll be demonstrating how those are used within the context of a tune. So as most of you probably know, the way we play different notes on an individual string is by pressing down on different frets. What this does is changes the vibrating length of the string, which we hear as different frequencies or notes. And the shorter we make the string, or the further we go down the fretboard, the shorter the string, the higher the frequency, the higher the note we hear. And just to understand the naming conventions here, the topmost fret is referred to as the first fret. This is the second, third, fourth, and so forth, all the way down the fretboard. And if you're going from the top part of the fingerboard down, then you're said to be going up the neck. So as you get started working on your basic fretting technique, there are a few things that I want you to try to keep in mind. The first is to use a light pressure when you fret. It's common for beginners to try to press down really hard against the fingerboard, and it's often a habit that they have to unlearn later on. But as I talked about with the picking hand, the more relaxed your hand, the lighter your pressure, the more nimble your fingers, the easier it is to develop speed, the less likely you are to have any type of problem with pain, and so forth. So try to fret with as light a touch as you can to get a good note. The second thing to remember is that you want your finger to come down as perpendicular to the fingerboard as possible. The flatter your angle of attack, the more likely you are to inadvertently mute one of the adjacent strings with the flesh of your finger, which you don't want to do. And the last thing to keep in mind is that you want to push down on the string as close to the fret as possible, so you want to be just behind it. The further back you go, the harder it is, the harder you have to push to get a nice clean note. And our goal here is to be able to generate a nice, crisp, clean note when we fret. So if you're completely new to fretting, first I would just recommend you play around with this for a little bit. Work on fretting different spots on the fingerboard, different strings, primarily with your index, middle, and ring finger. You may experience a little bit of pain at first until you start to develop calluses on your fingertips, and that's normal. But just work on the things I just talked about and trying to get a nice, clean, crisp note when you fret. When you feel a little bit comfortable with the technique, then move on to the upcoming tune exercises where we're going to work on fretting techniques some more. Okay, so now we're going to work on a few exercises that will serve as practice for your basic fretting techniques, and that will also revisit some of the picking patterns that we worked on in the last video, only this time in the context of a tune. And the tune we're going to play is Skip to My Lou. Now, why are we playing Skip to My Lou? Well, number one, it's a tune that hopefully is familiar to most, if not all of you, and all of you know how the melody goes. I think it's really important now, or really any time in the future, that whenever you set about to learn a new piece of music, that you know how it's supposed to sound or how the melody goes before you try to find the notes on your banjo. That's especially true right now while you're trying to think about and work on these other technical aspects of playing. You don't want to be worrying about how the tune is supposed to go at the same time. The other nice thing about Skip to My Lou is that it's a fairly straightforward melody, and it lays out nicely on the banjo in standard G tuning. And speaking of standard G, make sure your banjo is in that tuning before you go ahead and proceed with these exercises. In the downloadable materials that you can sign up for below, I cover basics of tuning and so forth, so hopefully you're familiar with how to tune the banjo. I'll go ahead and give you the notes for standard G tuning here real quick. So you should have a D on the first string, a B on the second string, a G on the third string, a D on the fourth string, and a G on the fifth string. So before we get started with the exercises, I want to make sure that we all have the basic melody of Skip to My Lou in our heads, and we know where those melody notes are on the banjo. So if we start out with the first phrase, it goes like this. Lost my partner, what'll I do? Pretty easy, all open strings. So we have 2 strokes on the open second, 2 strokes on the open third, 2 strokes on the open fourth, 1 stroke on the open third. Next phrase is, lost my partner, what'll I do? So again, we have 2 strokes on the open second, 2 strokes on the open third, 1 stroke on the third string at the second fret, 1 stroke on the fourth string at the fourth fret, and then the open fourth string 1 time. Next phrase goes, lost my partner, what'll I do? So once again, 2 strokes on the open second, 2 strokes on the open third, 3 strokes on the second string at the first fret. And the last part of the verse goes, skip to my Lou, my darling. Which is 1 stroke on the third string, second fret, 1 stroke on the second string, open, and then the second string at the first fret, back to the second string, open, and then to the third string, second fret, and then to the open third twice. All together. I should mention here that when we're fretting notes, we also want to make sure or try to use an economy of motion with our fretting hand. So you'll notice when I was fretting out the notes in the melody that I was keeping my fretting hand essentially in the same spot, and I was using different fingers to fret the different notes. So in the example of Skip to My Lou, we basically have 3 notes we have to fret. We've got the second string at the first fret, which we'll use our index finger for. We have the third string at the second fret, which we use our middle finger for. And we have the fourth string at the fourth fret, which we'll use the ring finger for. So doing so, we can keep our left hand or our fretting hand in the same spot and not have to move up and down the neck to fret those notes. All right, so for our first exercise, we're going to be playing the same melody, but we're going to be inserting a strum thumb stroke after the melody notes. And this is sometimes referred to as a bum ditty type of pattern. This is what the tab looks like, and you'll notice that I've kept the melody notes in bold, so that will help you to know where those fall in this arrangement. And it should sound something like this. In this second example, we're going to, again, play the same Skip to My Lou melody, but we're going to be playing some hammer thumbs after the melody notes. This gives it a little bit more of a sparser sound than the strum thumbs do. So here's the tab, and it sounds like this. So for this third exercise, we're going to be playing the same melody, only this time we're going to be adding in a thumb stroke after every downstroke with our picking finger. This will give it sort of a staccato machine gun type of sound. And this is oftentimes referred to as a ditty-ditty pattern. So in tab it looks like this, and it should sound like this. Okay, so I'd recommend that you continue to work on those 3 exercises along with just basic fretting practice until the next video. And again, I advise you to do the exercises along with the metronome if you can, and you can use the metronome playlist. Start with the slower settings and work your way up to faster ones as you get comfortable with it. And if you'd like to have the tablature for these exercises, don't forget to sign up for the written materials that supplement these videos through the link below in the video description. So get to work on those exercises and work on your basic fretting technique, because next time we're going to work on some more advanced skills. So I'll see you in lesson 6.